Yo, guys, what's going on? Coach Jamie here, and I am so excited to have you here listening to my podcast, Make Time for Your Mind with Coach Jamie, where we will be talking about all things mindset, vulnerability, personal development, ways we can become better individuals. And sometimes in that process, we'll get heavy, sometimes we'll have fun, and sometimes I will be challenging your perspective. The goal, no matter what, though, is to leave you better than you were before you tuned in. So, with that being said, let's dive in. Welcome back, everybody. And as always, thank you for being with me here. I'm so grateful that you have chosen to take the time to listen or watch now. This podcast. Thank you for being with me. It means a lot. Love being able to spend time with you. And so, that being said, as always, make sure if there's ever any subjects you want me to discuss, or if you ever have any feedback on how these episodes have impacted you, I'm always open and ready to hear about those. So, all that to say, episode 6, season 2, and to think I wasn't even going to do a podcast. People had asked me for like 4 years. And I was like, nah, because it's just like a party. I'd rather go to a party and then leave and I don't have to worry about the cleanup. But then finally I was like, nah, maybe there is something to do this. So hosting and having my own podcast has actually been pretty fun. Let's say. There is something that has always stuck with me for a while, and I think it's a big problem that doesn't necessarily get talked about. And that's labels. It's great how dedicated we are to personal development, or just how woke of a culture we're becoming. And we're so much more aware of our traumas and, able to identify our personality traits through all these different personality quizzes and all of that. But as always, too much of one thing can be a bad thing. And I think the extreme that has been happening unintentionally is that these labels start to enable us. I know for me personally, it even happened back when I was 13. I got sent to the doctor because I was a freaking hot mess. And I was diagnosed with depression. And that diagnosis enabled me so hard. Like, I almost let it justify why I treated people worse, or why I didn't want to get out of bed, or why I didn't want to do certain things. It was because I was depressed. That label enabled me to act a certain way because I gave it so much power. People who get so tied up into being a mom, a dad, an employee, a business owner, a friend, whatever. Sometimes that very thing also too becomes of all of our identity, right? Like, your work becomes your entire identity. And then nobody wants to be around you because all you know is work, and you don't even know how to have a normal conversation with somebody, because that label enables you. Another badge of honor, and I've talked about it on multiple posts, is I thrived on being able to tell people I was a workaholic, as if that was an awesome quality to carry. But it wasn't just quality, because it now became my identifier, and that was how I was showing up all the time. And I didn't know how to just settle down and be a normal human. And I think this is also happening more and more, again, with like our traumas. And this is big. Again, actually, I'm just going to give a disclaimer before I dive too far in. I'm not a therapist. Got it. I would never diagnose somebody. I would never tell somebody that they don't have a specific diagnosis, right? Like, if things are super, super bad, like, there's doctors and there are medical professionals that are great at what they do for a reason. Like, that's there for a reason. But one issue that I have been having, and I have found in experience, I'm going to make sure I don't put that into one word, two separate words, with so many of my clients. I've worked with so many people who have never been to a therapist, or they currently are still working alongside a therapist, or they have worked with therapists and it's been very bad experiences. And the reason why is because more times than not, they get caught in talking about their traumas and their experiences over and over and over again. Yes, we've got to be able to identify where these triggers are coming from and why we respond to things we do a certain way. Plugging the pastor from my church at Red Rocks, Pastor Doug, he said a really cool thing is that to every behavior, there is a backstory. So I think it is important to be able to know and identify who we are, how we got there, and why we do what we do, and how do we go about changing it. Okay, the how and the what are the part that always seem to get missed, and that's a lot of what I work with people through. But so many of them are like, every time I go, all that's happening is I'm sitting there talking about all my feelings. We're talking about this thing that happened when I was 5, and I walk out of there like maybe slightly feeling better for the moment, but then I just feel like crap the rest of the time because all I'm thinking about is this stuff that happened, or what does it mean, and why do I feel this way? Why do I keep let this happening? Like, it's the aftermath that comes with it. I personally like to refer to that as emotional hangovers, but that's just me and what I do within my business, and what I refer to when it happens in my life. But again, another example is I'm going to speak from my experience because that's what I know, from what I've heard from my clients, but also what's happened to me personally. I remember I've went to multiple therapists, and this is not a therapist bashing session by any means. I hope y'all know that because I work very closely with therapists to be able to refer my clients who need that type of support and care that I certainly cannot provide because it's out of my scope. So again, disclaimer, just in case anyone wants to be coming in hot and heavy because they don't like what I have to say. But again, I was one of those people. Every single thing that I did was because of my daddy issues. I was depressed because of my daddy issues. I was depressed, and this is why I now had this diagnosis because of all of these things that had happened to me, and it enabled me. It became my identity, and it was the excuses that I now was making because I locked into that label so hard. I let it enable me to not do things or to do certain things that I shouldn't have. And so I think there's, as always, there is a balance to everything, is that it's great that TikTok, mastermind courses you can take, coaches, therapists, books you can read. There's so many things out there that can give you the ability, or now even the big thing is doing shadow work, where you can purchase these books to dive into the deep stuff and ask yourself these deep questions. And I do think that there's so much value to that. But at some point, you've got to come up for air, because if that's all you're doing is constantly focusing on healing, you're never going to fully feel healed enough to actually like enjoy your life, or you're going to miss out on all of the life that's happening right now because you're constantly trying to overcare wounds that don't necessarily need tended to all the time. Again, there's a balance. I think it's important to know that, so that way you can now pivot. If you are taking your perspective and you are using it in a way that you can now pivot to do something with that information and take action to change your current situation, so it doesn't end up like the past situation. I'm good and with that, and I think that that's beautiful, and that's what should be done. But again, unintentionally, we take it to the extreme where it's because of this, and this is why I go to my addiction, and then my addiction just it takes over, because that's all you're thinking about is the addiction, the trauma. There was a guy that reached out to me and did a discovery call because he was wanting coaching, and I had him share with me his story, and he was telling me all this crazy stuff that happened, and it was heavy, and I felt for him. But everything was, well, I need to do this and I need to do that, and this is what's going wrong in my life because of this, because of that, and this is why I'm stuck in this circumstance because of this, and this, and this. And I'm like, okay, so what are you doing about it to change it? Well, I just don't know what to do. So I was like, hey, I'm going to give you a call to action, as I always give everybody. And I'm like, no matter what, like even before I would work with you, I need to know that you're in the right headspace to be able to make a change. And so I gave him a challenge on what I wanted him to try instead of doing things the way that he had been doing it. And I wanted him to follow up with me. Never heard from the dude again. There's so much comfort and familiarity, as I just talked about the silent killer of on a couple episodes back. If you didn't listen to that one, go check it out. But we like to find the coziness in victimhood. Let me just stay in this dark little shell because this is what I know, and this is just who I am, and these are just the cards that I was dealt, and this is how life is going to be, and it's always going to be. And although I would love, and I say I'm ready and willing to do everything I can to change it, all I'm focused on, my daddy issues, the fact that all this stuff happened to me. And I'm not saying any of this to be cold-hearted. I promise you that. Because again, I'm speaking and telling you first and foremost that I have been that person. There's still moments that I fall back into that behavior and I become that person of enabling a specific attitude or a specific identity because it's what I know. And there's a lot of comfort that can come in that. But that doesn't mean that just because it's comfortable that it's good. So, what I want to challenge you is to sit down. I like setting timers. Y'all know this about me by now. And if you don't know, now you know. I want you to write down all on the ways that you label or identify yourself. A mom, a dad, a business owner, an employee, a friend, an encourager, a giver, sad, depressed, broken, afraid, courageous, whatever it is. The more that you can write down, the better. I want you to just write down all of the different ways that you label yourself. And then I want you to just kind of check through and how many of them, be real with yourself, how many of those get thrown around on a regular basis? How much power are you giving to that label? Because remember, this is a part of you. It is not you. Okay? So you are not your job. This is your job. Two totally different things. You are a mother or a father, but that's not all that you are. That's a role that you play. That is part of what you do. That's part of how you show up in this world, but that is not who you are. It is not your entire identity. I would love to give a second call to action on this, but I would just very much like to see what happens when you guys actually sit and do this, because I'm sure there's some people who are like completely like unhinged with what I have just said, and that how dare I throw that when I'm not aware of what mental health thing or what they've been through or what they're currently going through. Like, how dare I? Right? And you might be right. But I want to challenge you on why you're so bothered by it and if there's any truth to that. And again, I'm saying that not from a self-righteous space. I'm saying that because that is something that I have found so much value in doing, is that if there's something that bothers me and I feel triggered by that, instead of lashing out, I have conditioned myself to ask, why was I so bothered by that? Was it because I thought that I meant more to that person than what it was than when they said that? Is it because there was truth to it and I didn't want to accept it? Was it because I was seeking validation from somebody and I was hoping that they didn't see that insecurity in me? I learned to sit with the discomfort of the things that other people thought or said around me, about me, or to others. Like, why am I so bothered by that? So that's my challenge to you if you're somebody who's just appalled with what I just shared. But yeah, I just want to know, and I would be interested to see, like, what are some of those labels that you notice? Like, circle them. All the ones that you catch yourself, like, owning that label as on a regular basis. And how much of, like, that is consuming you. I just want to start there. And I would love feedback. Again, good, bad, in between. I'm here for it all. I'm here to help you guys grow, but in return, I get to grow through this process as well. And that's how we all get better. So I'm open to all of it. So feedback is definitely appreciated, and just results. Knowing who's watching and how this is impacting you is big to me. So sharing your results and knowing that it's able to help change your life. That's very helpful to me because it encourages me to keep making these, knowing that it's making a difference. And that you're able to find better ways to become a better person, to live a happier life for you. So, all right. What labels are currently enabling you? And is it good or bad? So, with all of that to say, with tough love and accountability, Coach Jamie out.